Hello, welcome once again. I'm Imran Garda and you're in The Stream. Today we look at US legislation that's pitted Hollywood against the internet heavyweights of Silicon Valley. As always, our digital producer Ahmed Shihabuddin is here looking out for all your live feedback. Keep bombarding him throughout the program. Joining him on the couch is Sandra Eistaz, Executive Director at Copyright Alliance. Welcome to the show, Sandra. Now, if you went online today, you may have come across a message like this on Wikipedia saying, imagine a world without free knowledge, and you couldn't actually access any of the pages. Or you could have seen this maybe on reddit.com. SOPA and PIPA damage the internet. Today we fight back. Those websites like Wikipedia, Reddit and Mozilla are a few of the thousands that have gone dark, so to speak, to protest the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA as it's known. Now, supporters of this US House bill, namely the entertainment industry, believe it will give copyright owners more tools to go after sites that steal and sell US goods, including films and music. However, critics of the legislation claim it could lead to internet censorship and limit free speech online. Now, although Congress recently postponed the vote on SOPA, opponents have turned their attention to its sister bill, the Protect IP Act, or PIPA, which will face a Senate vote on January the 24th. Anti-PIPA group Fight for the Future created this explainer, which you can view on Vimeo. Let's have a look.
Private corporations want the ability to shut down unauthorized sites where people download movies, TV shows, and music. Since most of these sites are outside US jurisdiction, Protect IP uses a couple different tactics within American borders. Firstly, it gives the government the power to make US internet providers block access to infringing domain names. They can also sue US-based search engines, directories, or even blogs and forums to have links to these sites removed. Secondly, Protect IP gives corporations and the government the ability to cut off funds to infringing websites by having US-based advertisers and payment services cancel those accounts. In a nutshell, that's what Protect IP will try to do. But in all likelihood, it'll do something else altogether.
Okay, that gives you a taste, doesn't it? Well, some people have argued that this is only a US issue, but Ahmed's been receiving a lot of feedback from our community showing very international reactions. Ahmed?
It's true, Imran. You know, as thousands of websites are going dark around the globe to protest SOPA and PIPA, Twitter's CEO Dick Costolo has criticized companies for blacking out their sites. Now, he's responding to this tweet right here, which is from Digifile on Twitter. It says, it's not clear if Dick C. or FinKD, which is Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, or Eric Schmidt of Google have the guts to take users where Jimmy Wales and others have. Well, this is the response from Dick Costolo. It says, that's just silly. Closing a global business in reaction to single-issue national politics is foolish. But his criticism has stirred even more controversy online. As activists stress, it's foolish to assume this only affects the United States. This tweet from Amara Khan, in it she writes, to idiots thinking SOPA is just going to affect Americans, is the internet, quote, just American? No, it's global, so is SOPA. And you'll notice that Amara right there is using the hashtag StopSOPA, which as you can see on this trends map is and has been trending worldwide all day long. And it's not just US sites, but organizations across the world that are participating in the protest. Hebir, which is right here, is a Jordanian citizen media platform that has also gone dark for 24 hours to protest SOPA and PIPA. We also have Netzpolitik, the German digital rights group, has also shut down their site in protest of SOPA. And even French-based Reporters Without Borders has gone dark. Now, Fight for the Future, the organization behind the video that Imran played for you earlier, is a nonprofit that's helping to organize this unprecedented strike against web censorship. And it's encouraging those outside the US to voice their opposition. If you look like right here, forgive me, if you look right here, you see that this is a petition that aims to pressure the State Department to speak out against what they call the US's new domestic censorship system. Now remember, if you want your ideas to be covered in this show, send them to us using the hashtag AJStream.
Hi, I'm the Stop Online Piracy Act, and I'm in
Well, joining us now by Skype from New York is Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit.com and author of Without Your Permission. Welcome to the stream, Alexis. Nice to have you on the program once again. I know you've been quite busy today at a protest today. Reddit's gone dark, so to speak, so we're glad that you took the time to talk to us. Tell us why you are so passionately opposed to this legislation.
Well, back in 2005, Steve Huffman and I moved up to Medford, Massachusetts with some laptops and $12,000 in funding. And we started a company called Reddit.com. A year and a half later, we pretty much lived the American dream. We worked our butts off. We made something people loved. We were acquired by Condé Nast and became internet millionaires. This is not the only example of the kind of innovation and growth of the economy that happens because of the internet sector. This is not even the biggest one, but yet all of them, that entire notion of creating something that people love and succeeding from it is threatened by these bills because they were written by lobbyists and not technologists. And so 1,000 of us, at least from the New York tech community, have come out to our senators' offices here in New York City to protest, along with other protesters around the US. It's not just Silicon Valley, I can assure you. There are 1,000 plus job creators and innovators who came out today. And one of my favorite parts of the protest was actually asking them, how many of you right now are at a company that is hiring? And nearly every hand shot up. There are not many industries in America right now that are as healthy, as vibrant, and creating as many jobs as the internet tech industry. And we're threatened by this lobbyist-written legislation.
Eloquently put. Sandra, why do you endorse this proposed legislation, or why are you by and large in favor of it?
We're very much in favor of the legislation because the internet is an important resource for especially individual artists and creators across the world. We rely on the internet to get our stories out, to market our work, to fundraise for our work, to deliver the work to our consumers and to make connections with our consumers. But increasingly, artists' ability to do that is being damaged by criminal offshore websites that are directed to the United States and that take U.S. creative products and resell them without authorization and without returning any profit to the individual artists and creators involved. We've got more than 11 million artists across the United States. They're not just big movie industry folks. We're talking about indie artists, about indie filmmakers, indie musicians, authors who write from their own homes, and the bill is very, very important to these people.
What someone like Alexis has alluded to and feels threatened by is not so much what is actually written into the bill, but the vagueness that leaves almost infinite potential for misuse of the bill to curb freedom and a democratic internet, if you like. Do you accept that?
I don't, and for a couple of reasons. One is that a lot of the criticism that's been directed at the bill is being directed to versions of the bill that are no longer being debated, first off. There have been many changes that have been made to the bill over the past several weeks that have been made by the authors of the bill to try and address the criticisms that people, including folks like Alex, have made about the bill. So there have been tightened definitions, and I would urge people to actually look at the text of the manager's amendment in the House, and you will see that the types of sites that the activity is directed towards are first of all, foreign-based sites that are directing their activity to the United States consumer that are primarily designed or operated to infringe, either by distributing counterfeit products or by distributing entire copies of copyrighted works for profit. Or for commercial advantage. So these are not the sorts of sites that are being blacked out today. I think it's a very interesting move on the internet. It's certainly generated a lot of interest in the legislation to black out your sites.
Do you think this is a bit of a publicity stunt?
I think it is,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so before we go to the community with Ahmed giving us scores of feedback here, Alexis,
yes.
Sandra basically saying this is gimmicky from the likes of Reddit, Wikipedia, Google, and everybody else.
Unfortunately, that's just not true. The remedies in these bills all involve domestic sites. Basically, what we're being told is these bills aren't aimed at US sites, but I don't care what they're aimed at. I care about what they might blow up. And what they might blow up are the domestic sites, legit American companies who have to bear the burden of big government with the potential to shut them down overnight. The language is so vague, a website like Reddit could even be misconstrued as a search engine and have to comply with taking down any piece of content. This is a user-generated site, like so many that have thrived online, so many that your show is powered by, like Twitter, etc., that cannot keep up with the deluge of user-generated content and are not doing anything illegal themselves. It is unfair to place this burden on American companies, especially upstart companies that are getting started in cafes across the country that could be the next billion-dollar company that is creating all of those jobs. Just like I saw all those hands shoot up. You know, we're talking about innovation in this country that is being stifled by a bill that was written by $94 million in lobbying money that was paid by Hollywood last year.
Okay, Sandra, hold that response. Let's get to the community, and then you can piggyback your response with some other responses after that.
Yes, it's true. It's quite difficult. We do have a lot of comments coming in. I'll just read a quick few. Sarah Rashid on Twitter saying, well, for one, how can you even begin to implement those restrictions that SOPA includes realistically? It seems impossible, perhaps because it's broad and vague, as Alexis said. We also have Shahi in Rome saying, the bill clearly indicates the parochial thinking of U.S. politicos. The basis of this bill is the WikiLeaks confessions. Now, one last video question or comment that came in from Malaysia says perhaps some of these copyright laws are archaic. Let's listen in to Cindy Liu.
My name is Cindy from Malaysia. I think regarding SOPA and the battle on online piracy, I will admit that I use a lot of the internet to look for content, and piracy is sometimes very rampant in other parts of the world, including Malaysia. But the problem is these media corporations are so US-centric. They produce such great content, but they do not think of the global market. So we either get these contents later than others, or it never arrive at our shores due to copyright issues or lack of distribution channels. So instead of blaming the internet, why don't they discuss about changing the concept of copyright and intellectual property, which is kind of an archaic but profitable entitlement to corporations? Thanks.
So as the world changes, maybe it's the laws that need to change and not the internet.
I think it is the laws that need to change, and this is one of them, actually. I think everybody that's talked about this problem recognizes that it is an enormous problem, that piracy is stealing jobs and is ruining economies around the world. The estimates that the International Chamber of Commerce have come out with in terms of how many, what's the global impact of piracy around the world is $775 billion. That's an awful lot of legitimate revenue at stake for upstart, legit distribution sites, for artists, for creators. The criticisms that I've heard from Alex and that I've heard, from others are, inaccurate about the bill. Again, he's commenting that Reddit would somehow be swept up and have to monitor what's going on their site, have to take down posts that people might put up on Reddit. And if you look again at the manager's amendment, there is a specific exclusion for sites that says that you don't have to monitor what's going on your site. Reddit is also a US-based site. It operates within the United States, and so this is not the sort of site that is being targeted by the bill. I recognize that Alex is trying to make a separate point, which is, yes, we are going after illegitimate criminal sites abroad that are pirate sites, and we need to do that with the collaboration of everybody in the United States that works on the internet and does business on the internet. There's no excuse for Google or others to sell ads against illegitimate content. They make tons of money doing so, billions of dollars. They've testified to Congress as much. There's no reason why Google should not have to respond to the same sorts of obligations that payment processors and other ad networks are saying that they're willing to step up.
Sandra, I wonder, there's an article that was forwarded to me just before we went to air by one of our producers saying SOPA blackout, bills lose 3 co-sponsors amid protests. 3 co-sponsors of the SOPA PIPA anti-piracy bills have publicly withdrawn their support. Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, Republican, as well as Lee Terry and Ben Quayle as well. They've pulled out, and of course Barack Obama and the White House are against these bills. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, actually, Barack Obama and the White House did not come out against the bills. Barack Obama and the White House said that legislation needs to be passed by the end of this year to address the very enormous and important problem of online piracy. The administration set forth various goals that any bill that Congress
well, they weren't happy with the way
House.
SOPA was presented with it.
Well, we can quibble about that, but the truth of the matter is that if you look at their statement, the statement says there are various goals that every bill has to meet before the administration will sign it into law. And I think if you look at the manager's amendment and you actually read the language of the manager's amendment rather than listen to hype around what it might theoretically do in a world that we're not currently experiencing, you'll see that the legislation meets all of the goals that the administration has set out.
Okay, Alexis, I know you're desperate to get in again. Alexis, let's go to Ahmed first, and then you can come in after him. Ahmed?
Yeah, just a couple of people taking issue live with some of the things that are being said. NSRY Berg saying on Twitter, the blacklist is not a publicity stunt. It's a preview of life after PIPA and SOPA. And then also commenting on something you said earlier about how the internet is used by your organization for marketing. Sniffly Whale saying the SOPA advocate on AJ Stream doesn't seem to realize that the internet is not your marketing platform, at least not only your marketing platform. So those are some people taking contention with some of the things said, but we also have this from Kevin who says it's really all about profit at the end of the day. Let's listen in.
I'm Kevin Gastola. I blog at The Dissenter at Firedog Lake. And SOPA is something that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, MPAA, and the RIAA really support, and they're doing it under the guise of protecting intellectual property and artists. But it seems like they're really interested in profits and protecting the 1%.
Alexis?
With all due respect, first and foremost, my name is Alexis, not Alex. But most importantly here, I appreciate the way you artfully dodge the fact that these bills are losing co-sponsors by the hour. There is clearly an awakening happening in Washington. Our senators, our representatives are finally realizing that although lobbying dollars wrote this legislation, the American people do not want it. And with millions of Americans opposing SOPA and PIPA because these bills would censor the internet, would slow this innovation and slow its growth, it will not pass, and it can't. Because I would not like to make any presumptions about you and your background, but I'm going to assume that you have not started a tech startup, and perhaps one that would be affected by this legislation. I can assure you, especially things like there's a paragraph in Section 103 that is simply terrifying, because you only need to be accused of violating copyright to be shut down without any trial.
Yeah, you're pointing to Section 103, and actually that is one of the sections that was most amended by the manager's amendment, and there, I think you're referring to the notice counter notice provisions that used to be in that section that had originally been placed there to suggest that a exhaustion of remedies needs to occur privately before you go and pursue a federal court action. There was a lot of upset about those provisions, and those were taken out. So those are no longer part of the bill.
Okay, Alexis?
Oh, sorry. You're referring to, yes, one of the sections we were able to hack away. One of the present ones that we have to still deal with, that a search engine has to deal with, is with filtering these search results that may link to content. The search engines themselves are not actually pirating the content, and you're holding an American company, a domestic company, one that is creating lots of jobs here, to a standard that is simply untenable.
Alexis, many of the SOPA PIPA opponents, like yourself, have mentioned in numerous articles that I've been reading that this proposed legislation would perhaps outlaw the very tools used by activists in places like Iran and China to circumvent censorship. I mentioned Iran and China, but maybe also if you add some other not so friendly to the internet countries in as well. How would that happen? Explain that to me, because I was struggling to understand that.
Well, actually, I'm of the opinion that the most frustrating thing about all this legislation, on top of what it would do to the industry and what it would do to the internet, is that it would not effectively solve the problem. And this is what happens when you have lobbyists, not technologists, actually writing the bills. I mean, you had people during the House Judiciary Committee who admitted almost proudly that they weren't nerds and that they didn't understand the quote technology. That's a very, very scary proposition. I, as an entrepreneur, am interested in protecting copyright holders. And I think it's very interesting that today you've got plenty of copyright holders standing in opposition, blacking out their sites, showing that they don't want anything to do with SOPA and PIPA because it actually threatens the integrity of the internet. The internet censorship is inherently futile because of the structure of how it works. People are getting around the Great Firewall of China right now using tools that our State Department encourages.
Alexis, on that note, it's funny, you know, a couple hours ago, maybe just 1 hour ago, Mark Zuckerberg came out publicly on Facebook, you know, saying he is against SOPA. And on the note of politicians and how perhaps politicians don't understand the tech world, which is what you just mentioned, in his post, he says right here, the world today needs political leaders who are pro-internet, and that he has been working with many of these folks for months for better alternatives to these current proposals. So, for example, is this, you know, we have certain people who are writing in, like Terrence Adjay on Twitter, saying, I hope protesters keep in mind that people still have a right to protect their intellectual property. So with that being said, as MG Huff puts it on Twitter, is it possible to police piracy without curbing free speech?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Sorry for the reception. The important thing to remember here is we have two options. We have a scenario where we increase government, where we give the government the power and the authority to do a lot more to try to stop this problem, or we leave it to the free market to innovate better solutions for curbing piracy. We can write legislation that helps attack pirates. We are all for effective ways to curb piracy. We just believe it should be legislation that is done thoughtfully and not at the expense of a great industry. Because I'm pretty confident things like Netflix, things like the kind of innovation we see from entrepreneurs are ultimately going to win the day, because piracy is a service problem. We need to get people paid for the work they do. We just need the free market to do it, not government.
Okay. On the First Amendment question.
Okay, Sandra, if you can, in 20 seconds.
This has nothing to do with freedom of speech and the First Amendment. This has to do with commercial websites selling infringing commercial content into the United States. The tech industry is doing wonderful, vibrant things. They don't need to be protecting rogue pirate sites abroad that are stealing U.S. jobs, stealing U.S. intellectual property, and selling it back into the United States at a profit.
Okay. As always, so much to say, so little time. We're going to have to stop it there, because before we end the show, Ahmed, give us a taste of some of the other stories that we're working on.
Well, today in our lead section, we're looking at some other measures around the world that could infringe on internet freedoms. Our first lead is from Singapore. The Motion Picture Association of America, a key proponent behind SOPA in the United States, is promoting similar legislation. Singaporean law minister says the government is discussing the issue of piracy, including blocking websites. And as a signatory to the United States Free Trade Agreement, Singapore is obligated to enact similar laws if SOPA passes in the US. Now next, on to China, where plans to make users of microblogs such as Twitter or Sina Weibo register with their real names is causing controversy. Critics say real name registration is an attempt to trace the authors of negative political comments, while officials claim this will stop the spread of false rumors and illegal conduct. Now our final lead is from India, where networking sites like Facebook and Google could face legal action for failure to remove content that the government considers objectionable. The chairman of India's press council says he supports regulating the content of social sites because he says they overlook real issues such as poverty and focusing on celebrity news. Those are our stream leads. If you want more, visit stream.aljazeera.com/leads. Cast your votes for the stories you're interested in, and tell us what you want to see on a future show. Imran?
Thanks for that, Ahmed, and thank you, Alexis Ohanian on Skype, and Sandra Eisters here on the couch as well. Fascinating discussion. Thanks for watching the stream. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Welcome back to the post show. Thanks for watching online on stream.aljazeera.com. We're going to be continuing our discussion on the proposed SOPA and PIPA bills and all the opposition today to it, Reddit, Wikipedia and others going black in protest. Certain key sponsors of the bills pulling out now due to the pressure that is currently ongoing and all the activism. Sandra Eisters has been defending the legislation here. Sandra, you didn't get a chance to completely finish your point on the show, such is the nature of television. Sure. I'm going to give you an opportunity now.
Sure. I think where we ended, we were talking about what the bills, do and don't do. And the thing that I would really like to focus discussion on is the definitions in the bill and the modifications that have been made to the bill to address the criticisms that people have raised about the bill. So if we can kind of direct our attention back to specific provisions, I think that will help the debate. It's frustrating sometimes when debate occurs at such a level that is disconnected with what the actual drafting of the bill entails. There's been some criticism that technologists weren't consulted adequately on the bill, and I think that's also misplaced. There were numerous hearings in the House and in the Senate. The bill was pending in the Senate or versions of the bill for 2 years now. And in the House, in fact, there were hearings where Google and others in the tech industry who opposed the bill were invited to come, and they refused to come. At the last hearing, the legislative hearing, Google sent a representative only after being threatened that there would be an empty chair sitting in the conference room, in the hearing room, if they didn't show up. So I think we need to focus really on what the bills say, what they do, and kind of cut the theatrics.
Okay, Alexis, would the sponsors be able to modify the bill enough in order to placate you and to calm some of your fears?
Oh, sorry. I don't know if there are going to be enough sponsors left in the next couple of days at the rate that they've been falling off. I think this is indicative of what bad legislation we have. And again, written by lobbyists, not by technologists. What we need to do is start fresh. We've got some bipartisan work with an open bill that is at least starting the conversation from a sane, reasonable place. And I don't think there's anything left to be done to try to save SOPA or PIPA. It's time to move on. We need to, if I can borrow a phrase used by Sega, we need a hard reset.
Well, it's interesting, Alexis, we have a lot of comments that came in when we did our Ask Me Anything on Reddit. From Special Tea Sauce right here, my question is, how can the U.S. government justify making policies that reach beyond the jurisdiction of U.S. law? And this question to you, perhaps you could answer it. As a non-American, I'm concerned for the survival of web culture and more so about the U.S. pushing their policies to a global scale. There needs to be international agreement and discussions on the social and cultural effect of laws like those of SOPA and the way, the effect they have on the worldwide community. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that lots of digital activists in countries across the Arab world, other parts of the world this year, especially last year, could really be persecuted under these laws and the extensions of these laws. I mean, what would you say to this?
These laws do nothing to go after digital activists or other activists here or abroad. They go after commercial websites that are primarily designed and operated to sell infringing and counterfeit content.
But under the definition of infringing content, the political, opposition and dissent and religious dissent falls under those categories.
That's incorrect.
That's not incorrect.
Let's look at the managers.
It's broad and vague enough that it could potentially. Is that incorrect?
It is incorrect. Okay. It's we're talking about commercial speech and commercial theft of commercial goods. We're not talking about activism. We're not talking about political discourse here. And I actually find it kind of distasteful that people would suggest that it's somehow, Twitter or technology that motivated the Arab Spring.
Not
yes,
motivated.
It helped connect people, but it was a person, a vegetable vendor, setting himself on fire.
Okay, but that's a different debate. To be fair, in Syria, for example, when journalists are not allowed into the country, much of the world relies on certain services like YouTube and other social media platforms.
Absolutely.
So in that respect, if YouTube was taken down under these would it not affect those activists?
YouTube would not be taken down. YouTube does not meet the definition of sites that could be taken down.
Google doesn't either.
Google certainly doesn't.
World, what we're basically telling you with this legislation, Congress is basically saying to you, trust us, we won't abuse this. This is a Congress that in the US has worse approval ratings than Mars needs moms. Okay?
I won't defend Congress's approval ratings, but I will make the point that blind distrust of governments is just as bad as blind trust of government. We really need to question what the bills say, look at the specifics, and talk with the facts in mind, rather than...
To your point, because I don't want to get too knee-deep in a very technical legal argument, I've already cited a section, but I will refer you to blog.reddit.com. We've done a very technical analysis of both SOPA and PIPA. Now, I know you're not a technologist, but you're clearly well armed with talking points. Please take a look, especially Title I, Sections 101, 102, and 103 of SOPA, and Sections 2, 3, and 4 of Protect IP. And I will leave it to all the viewers here. Take a look, read for yourself. You can see why it is a problem for us as entrepreneurs, and why this is totally unsustainable, unreasonable
Alexis, if I may interrupt
Please.
you, just because of the conversation we were having earlier where I mentioned that YouTube could potentially be shut down, and that's something that as laymen we often hear that in the discourse, and our guest said that's not true. Am I wrong in my understanding?
They're very, this is a question of language, because Google, YouTube, has an army of legal players. They have plenty of lawyers. They have plenty of money to be able to deal with the onslaught. Just like we're seeing DMCA abused, this would clearly be abused the same way. But what really terrifies me, and I think the biggest, one of the many arguments against why this is not just a Google-driven piece of opposition, is that the next Google, the next YouTube, the startup that is right now getting started, would be shut down, would not even probably be able to raise money. That's why all these venture capitalists are against this, because they're losing out on a great business opportunity, because you can't start a startup and have your second and all the way to 15th employees be legal or be fighting off these takedown requests.
Sandra?
I'll set aside the personal comments about my ability to discuss the legislation effectively, but I am familiar with the piece that you've posted on Reddit, and I'll just note that it makes reference to the original Stop Online Piracy Act, not the version that's been amended by the Manager's Amendment. Furthermore, there have been various other developments that have occurred over the last several days, including the authors of both legislation saying that they would take certain parts of it off the table entirely for discussion, so that the parts that are less controversial can be proceeded with, and that's the DNS related language. And I'm concerned that there's a bit of moving of the goalposts every time that there are changes made to the legislation to try and address criticisms, and I'm fully recognizing that there may have been legitimate criticisms to the original bills. No bill is perfect. Every time legislation is modified to address that, there's 10 other things that spring up. So I would urge people to actually talk in good faith and listen to what both sides are saying to try and come to a conclusion that is workable for all. Alexis mentioned the Open Act, which I just wanted to note very briefly, is something that I'm personally very concerned about. I actually, I'm very concerned for the individual artist and creator and their ability to work within any of these remedies. And admittedly, it's going to be hard to bring federal district court litigation, but coming to the ITC and working through a process that's set up for big corporate interests rather than individual litigants is going to be totally impossible.
Okay, well, I hope this discussion has left everybody else in the community and elsewhere a lot more informed on the issue. I think that's most important. Alexis and Sandra, thank you very much for joining us on the stream.
Thank you.
Ahmed, thanks for hoovering up all that feedback from the community. It was plenty.
Fraction of it.
Yeah, there was a lot for you to navigate there. You were like a DJ there. Yeah. Pretty impressive. Thanks for joining us on the stream. On Thursday, we look at Saudi Arabia with uprisings engulfing its neighbors. Will the monarchy embrace reform? Let's see. See you soon. Bye.